My own sister crawled into my husband's bed. My parents buried the truth like a dirty secret, and I smiled through every single second of her baby shower until I gave her my gift. The gift was wrapped in blush pink paper with a white satin ribbon, and I had spent 40 minutes getting the corners exactly right. I carried it into the venue myself, set it on the gift table between a diaper bag from Nadia's mother-in-law and a wicker basket wrapped in cellophane from one of her college friends. I smoothed the bow. I stepped back and looked at it like a proud sister. Then I walked to the food table and poured myself a glass of sparkling water with a steady hand. That morning, I had cried for exactly 12 minutes, in the shower, where the sound disappeared. Then I turned the water to cold, stood there until I stopped shaking, toweled off, and did my makeup. I wore a dusty rose dress because I knew it would photograph well against the florals I had arranged the day before. I smiled when each guest arrived. I remembered everyone's names. I laughed at the right moments. I filled champagne flutes and I cut the ribbon on the balloon arch, and I organized the gift opening rotation with a clipboard I had made myself. My mother caught my eye at one point and mouthed, "You're incredible." I smiled back. That was the moment I knew I had won. My name is Jade. I'm 31 years old, and I want to start from the beginning because context is everything. And what happened at that baby shower only makes sense once you understand what the 4 years before it looked like from the inside. My sister Nadia is 2 years older than me. She turned 33 in March, and my parents had called it a milestone because everything Nadia did was a milestone. Her first year of university, milestone. Her first apartment, milestone. Her engagement to Trevor, who was an engineer with a good job and a stronger jaw, milestone. My parents threw a dinner party for the engagement. 82 people, catered, held in their backyard in Riverside, California, the same house we'd both grown up in, the house my father had worked 23 years at the port to pay off. When I got engaged to Cole, my mother asked if we wanted to do something small, just family. I said that would be fine. We did brunch, 12 people. My mother forgot to order the cake she'd promised. I want to be clear about something. I am not telling you this to build a case for how unfair my childhood was. I made peace with the dynamic a long time ago, or I thought I had. What I mean is that I am not a person who was surprised to be overlooked. I had a long history of adapting to it. I had built my life sideways around my family's preferences for Nadia, the way you learn to walk around a piece of furniture that nobody's willing to move. You just stop expecting the room to be arranged for you. Cole and I had been together for 7 years when we married, 5 years dating, 2 years engaged, 12 months of planning a wedding my mother tried to redirect 3 separate times. We got married in June of 2022 at a vineyard in Temecula. It was beautiful. Cole wore a charcoal suit. I wore a dress I found at a sample sale for $400 and had altered twice. He cried when I walked down the aisle. So did I. I want you to hold that image for a second because it matters. Cole was the kind of husband who remembered small things. The brand of sparkling water I liked, the exact way I took my coffee, not written down, just memorized, without being asked. He remembered the name of my college roommate's dog and asked about it once, 2 years after I'd mentioned it. He was good with my parents, patient with Nadia's occasional condescension, present in a way I had not expected a person to be after years of being a second priority. I loved him in the specific way you love something you were not sure you deserved. That is the part that still cost me something when I think about it. The first thing I should have paid more attention to was Thanksgiving. November 2022, 5 months after our wedding. My parents hosted. Cole and I drove up from San Diego, where we'd moved that spring for his job. Nadia and Trevor came too. Trevor had been traveling for work a lot that fall, and Nadia had mentioned a few times that she was lonely, that she and Trevor were going through a dry spell, that she missed having someone to talk to. She said this to me, her sister. I thought that was intimacy. I thought she was confiding. I remember noticing at Thanksgiving that Cole and Nadia were talking. Not anything unusual. They were always reasonably warm with each other, but they were talking the way people talk when they've been talking already. A continuity to it, a shorthand I hadn't seen before. I remember thinking, it's nice that they get along. I remember thinking, maybe she's less lonely with us around. I put it away. I did what I always did. I adapted. I told myself the furniture was just arranged differently and I needed to adjust. It wasn't until February of the following year, February 14th, which I will acknowledge is a cruel piece of detail, that I got the first actual signal something was wrong. Cole told me he had to work late, finance deadline. He was a project manager at a mid-sized construction firm, and deadlines were real, often arbitrary, and I had never once questioned them. I ordered Thai food. I watched half a movie. I fell asleep on the couch. He came home at 12:40 in the morning. He smelled different, not alcohol, just different. A different soap or a different room or something I couldn't name and chose not to chase. He kissed the top of my head. He said he was exhausted. He went to bed. I lay on the couch for another hour, staring at the ceiling, telling myself I was being paranoid. Paranoia, I have since learned, is often just pattern recognition your conscious mind hasn't caught up to yet. It built slowly after that. A series of things that individually meant nothing and collectively meant everything. Cole's phone was suddenly always face down on surfaces. He started going to the gym more. He was distracted at dinners, present but not, like he'd mentally left the room and was somewhere else doing the math on something. He stopped initiating conversation about our weekends. He was still kind, still present enough, still the person who remembered my coffee order. But there was a glass wall between us that hadn't been there before, and when I pressed against it, I could feel the cold of it, but couldn't see through to the other side. I asked him twice if something was wrong. He said no no both times. First time, gentle. I've just been stressed with work, babe. Second time, with a flash of something that looked like irritation, but landed as concern. Why do you keep asking? Are you okay? Gaslighting doesn't always look like cruelty. Sometimes it looks like a question turned around on you so gently that you feel ungrateful for having asked. I was in Riverside for Nadia's baby announcement dinner, June of 2023, exactly a year after our wedding, when my mother mentioned offhand that Nadia was about 12 weeks along. Trevor was beaming. Nadia was glowing in the specific radiant way pregnant women in movies glow, the way I had always assumed was an exaggeration, but which on Nadia looked completely effortless. My father opened a bottle of champagne. I held my glass and smiled and felt something I couldn't quite name. Not jealousy, exactly. More like a familiar loneliness, a sense that the room had rearranged itself again, and there was nowhere new to stand. Cole reached under the table and squeezed my hand. I thought it was solidarity. I now understand it was guilt. The night that changed everything was a Thursday in late August. My parents had us over for dinner to celebrate Nadia's second trimester. She'd had a scare at 14 weeks, something resolved and minor, but my mother was treating the 20-week mark like a second announcement. Cole and I drove up from San Diego. Trevor was there. Nadia was there. We ate a pot roast my mother had been making since we were kids, and the evening had the warm, ordinary texture of a family dinner, which is the cruelest possible texture for a catastrophe to have. After dinner, I excused myself to use the bathroom. The hall bathroom was occupied, my father, I assumed, so I walked to the back of the house toward my parents' ensuite. I passed the kitchen on the way back. The door was half open. I could see my mother standing at the sink and hear my father behind her. Their voices were low. The particular low of people who are not worried about being overheard because they assume everyone who matters is in another room. I stopped. I should have kept walking. I have thought about this moment many times since, and I always arrive at the same conclusion. I am glad I did not. My mother said quietly and distinctly, "She can never find out. Nadia made a mistake, but she's pregnant now. We protect her. That's what we do." My father said nothing for a moment. Then, and if Cole won't say anything. He has as much reason to stay quiet as she does. I stood in the hallway for what felt like a very long time. My hand was on the wall. The wallpaper was a small blue floral pattern my mother had chosen in 1997 and never replaced. I remember looking at the pattern and thinking, with strange calm, that everything made sense now. The floor didn't drop out from under me. It was more like the floor went transparent, like I could suddenly see everything beneath it that had been there the whole time. I walked back to the dining room. I sat down. I listened to my father talk about the plans for the nursery. Cole said something about needing to check his phone and got up from the table, and I watched him leave the room and felt absolutely nothing, which scared me more than any feeling would have. I said I had a headache. We left early. I said nothing on the drive home. Cole asked 3 times what was wrong. I told him I was tired. He reached for my hand on the center console. I moved it to my lap before he could touch it. He noticed. He said, "Jade, talk to me." "I'm fine," I said. We drove the rest of the way in silence. For 2 days, I sat with it. I did not sleep well. I moved through the apartment like a person underwater. Slow, deliberate, using every ounce of effort to look normal. I went to work. I answered emails. I ate dinner across the table from a man who had destroyed my life, and I passed him the salt when he asked for it. On the second night, something in me shifted. The grief was still there. It has never fully left, but underneath it, something else formed. Something colder and more precise. I have thought about how to describe it, and the best I can come up with is this. The part of me that had spent 31 years being passed over had finally found a problem it was uniquely qualified to solve. I started going through his phone at night while he slept. The first 2 nights I found nothing. He'd been careful, and Cole was, if nothing else, organized. But on the 3rd night, I found a folder buried in his Photos app, tucked inside a sub-album he'd labeled Work Site Documentation. I almost dismissed it. Then I opened it. The photos were not of construction sites. I sat on the bathroom floor with my knees against my chest and I went through every single image. There were 63 photographs, some taken in what was clearly a hotel room, some in what I recognized as my parents' guest room. The green curtains I had helped my mother hang 3 years ago were visible in the background, some taken in a way that made clear the photographer was Cole and the subject was Nadia, and there was absolutely no interpretation available that wasn't exactly what I was looking at. I put the phone back. I got up, I went to the kitchen and drank a glass of water. Then I sat down at the kitchen table with my own phone and began searching for the texts. He'd deleted the conversations. Of course he had. But Cole backed everything up to the cloud, and I knew his credentials because I had helped him set up his account 2 years earlier when he got a new phone. I logged in from my laptop. The backup was 11 days old. I downloaded it. I parsed through it for 3 hours while he slept. The text went back to October of last year. 13 months of messages. They were not the messages of 2 people who had made a single mistake. They were the messages of 2 people who had planned, coordinated, managed, and laughed. There were messages where Nadia described me as oblivious. There were messages where Cole said I would never suspect anything because I trusted too much. There was a message from Nadia, sent on our first wedding anniversary, that said, "Does it feel weird being there with her?" And Cole had replied with a single laughing emoji. Our first anniversary. I closed the laptop. I went to the spare bedroom. I lay on my back on the bed in the dark and stared at the ceiling for a long time. I did not cry. I was past crying in the way you can get past crying when what you are processing is too large for tears to address. Then I found the messages between Nadia Nadia and my mother. This was the part I had not expected, the part that reconfigured everything I thought I understood about my family. There were 47 messages between them. My mother had known for at least 3 months, since May, which meant she had known at Nadia's announcement dinner. She had known when I held my champagne glass and smiled. She had known when Cole reached under the table and squeezed my hand, and I had leaned into him. She had watched all of that with a full understanding of what it meant and said nothing. In one of the messages from late June, she had written to Nadia, "Jade is fine. She doesn't see it. You need to stop worrying and focus on being healthy." And in another from July, "If it comes out, it will destroy the family. So it doesn't come out. End of discussion. End of discussion. 31 years, second daughter, second priority, second choice." And when the first true test came, when the moment arrived that would tell me exactly what I was worth to the people who raised me, my mother made her calculation and I didn't make the cut. I sat with that for a long time. Then I saved everything. I emailed myself 3 copies. I saved a backup to a USB drive I bought the next day at a Walgreens 2 exits from our apartment. I printed the most relevant messages, the ones from my mother, the ones where Cole called me oblivious, the ones with timestamps that placed him with Nadia on specific nights, and put them in a manila envelope in my car. Then I waited. My mother called 4 days later, cheerful, casual. She had that particular brightness in her voice she always got when she wanted something, and was about to ask for it in a way that made refusing feel ungrateful. "I was thinking," she said, "it might be really special if you organized Nadia's shower. You have such a good eye for these things." There it was. I was the second daughter, the one with no milestone parties, the one who organized the celebrations for other people, the one who set the table and then sat at the end of it. I paused long enough that she filled the silence. "She would love it if you did it. It would mean so much." "Of course," I said. "I'd love to." I heard her exhale, relief. "You're such a good sister," she said. "I know," I said. I hung up and started planning. Not the shower, the end of the shower. The shower was just the architecture I needed. The venue, the guest list, the timing, all of it in service of a single moment I had been building toward since the night I sat on the bathroom floor with a phone in my hands and my entire marriage visible on a small, bright screen. I booked the venue, a garden room at a restaurant in Pasadena that Nadia had mentioned once offhand, which I had written down at the time because I wrote down everything. I ordered the florals, I designed the centerpieces, I sourced a 4-tiered cake with the name picked out, Alara, which Trevor had mentioned during the dinner in June as the name they were considering. I arranged the balloon arch. I made a clipboard with a guest rotation schedule, and I had the photos printed, enlarged, the clearest ones, the ones with the green curtains in the background of my parents' guest room, the ones with the timestamps visible. I had them mounted on foam core boards, professional print shop, covered with fabric panels that hung from decorative hooks I had pre-installed on the back wall of the venue under the guise of decorating. I told the venue coordinator they were a gallery surprise for the mom-to-be. She helped me hang them herself. I did all of this over 10 days while Cole slept beside me and asked me each morning how the shower planning was going, and I said, "So good," and showed him my clipboard, and he smiled and said I was amazing. I was amazing. The day arrived on a Saturday. 41 guests. Nadia's friends, Trevor's family, aunts, cousins, neighbors my parents had invited. Trevor's mother, Margaret, was there. A formidable woman in her early 60s with the posture of someone who had never once slouched and the eyes of someone who had been paying attention her entire life. She sat in the front row of chairs. I had made sure she had a clear sightline. I had not told Cole where I was going that morning. I told him the shower was women only, which it more or less was. He kissed me goodbye. I carried the gift box to my car. The shower was beautiful. I want to be honest about this. It was probably the most beautiful event I had ever produced. The florals were soft and layered and right. The food was exactly what Nadia would have chosen. The lighting in the garden room caught the balloon arch at an angle that made everyone stop when they walked in and say something. My mother cried when she arrived. She hugged me and said I was incredible. I patted her back and told her it was nothing. Nadia arrived in a white sundress with her hand on her bump and her hair loose, and she was luminous. And I want to say that because I refused to reduce her to a villain. She was my sister. I had loved her my entire life. I had held her hand on the first day of 3rd grade when she was afraid of her new teacher. I had driven 40 minutes in the middle of the night to help her pack when her first apartment flooded. I had watched her graduate and clapped harder than anyone. Whatever she had done, she was still my sister, and what I was about to do was not something I took any pleasure in. I want to be precise about that. I was doing it because it was the only language left. We opened gifts. We ate cake. We played the game where you guess what's in the diapers. Nadia laughed. Margaret laughed. My mother moved through the room like she'd organized everything herself, accepting compliments gracefully, occasionally shooting me a look of warm approval that made my stomach tighten. About 40 minutes in, when the formal program had wound down and the room had settled into the easy drift of a party past its structured agenda, I stood up. "I have one more gift," I said. The room oriented toward me. Someone hushed a conversation. Nadia looked up from where she was seated in the decorated chair at the center of the room, the throne my mother had helped me set up, and she smiled. That enormous, open smile, the one I had grown up watching get everything. "This one's from me," I said. I wanted it to be special, something that really came from the heart. I retrieved the box from behind the gift table. Blush pink, white ribbon, 40 minutes of perfect corners. I carried it to her. She reached for it with both hands and began unwrapping it carefully, the way people do when they want want to preserve the paper. And for a moment, the room was completely silent except for the sound of tissue paper being folded back. Then she stopped. She went very still. She looked at what was inside. She looked at me. I said quietly, "Keep going." She didn't move. Her face had a quality I had never seen on her before. Not guilt. She'd had time to practice managing guilt. This was something older and deeper. Recognition. The specific terror of someone who has just understood that the game they thought they were controlling had been someone else's all along. The woman beside her, her closest friend, a woman named Bex, who had known us both since high school, leaned over to look. She made a sound. That sound carried. Heads turned. My mother stood up from the back of the room. "Jade, I'm not finished," I said. Not loudly, not with heat, just clearly. I walked to the back wall. I pulled back the first fabric panel. The room made a collective sound that I will never fully describe. It was not a gasp. It was something more complicated than a gasp. It was the sound of a room full of people rearranging their understanding of the last hour in real time. The photos were large and clear and unmistakable. Cole's face, Nadia's face, the green curtains my mother had helped me hang 3 years ago. I pulled back the second panel. Mounted beside the photos were printed pages, the text messages, my mother's messages, highlighted, dated. I had 3 of the lines underlined in red. "She doesn't see it, so it doesn't come out." End of discussion. The room was absolutely silent. I turned and faced them all. My mother had one hand over her mouth. My father had gone gray. Nadia was holding the box in her lap with both hands, staring at the wall. Her husband Trevor was at the far table, a man who had trusted his wife, who had sat beside her all afternoon with his hand on her shoulder, who had told me before the shower started that he was so grateful Nadia had a sister who would do something like this for her. He was looking at the photos the way people look at things that cannot possibly be real. Then I spoke. Not loudly, not with cruelty, just with the particular clarity of someone who has had 11 days to find exactly the right words. "My name is Jade," I said, "and for the last 13 months, my husband and my sister have been having an affair. I know because I found the photos and the messages. And when I say messages, I mean all of them, including the ones between Nadia and our mother, where my mother helped them manage the cover-up. I'm not going to scream. I'm not going to cry. I just wanted everyone in this room to have the same information I have." I looked at my mother. "You said she can never find out. You were wrong." My mother made a sound. She started toward me. Trevor stood up. His chair hit the floor. He was a composed man. I had always thought of him as composed, measured, slow to heat, and what I saw on his face in that moment was not something composed. He looked at Nadia for a long time, long enough that the silence had weight. Then he picked up his jacket from the back of his chair, folded it over his arm, and walked out of the room without saying a single word. The door closed behind him. For one full second, nothing happened. Then Trevor's mother, Margaret, stood up. She was 62 years old with the posture I mentioned, and what she said was not addressed to anyone in particular. It was addressed to the room. 3 words, spoken in a voice that did not rise or tremble. "Get out, Nadia." What happened next was not something I had planned. I had planned for the reveal. I had planned for the confrontation. I had not planned for what happened when a room full of people received information they could not process quietly. Trevor's father moved toward my father. My father moved to put himself between them and Nadia. Someone I did not recognize knocked over the cake stand. It went down slowly, one tear at a time, like a building being demolished, landing in pieces across the floor. 3 women near the door moved toward the exit simultaneously. Someone was crying. Margaret and my mother were speaking at a volume and register that had moved past language into something more fundamental, and at some point in the chaos, I did not see it happen. I only saw the aftermath. Trevor's father swung. My father went down, stayed there. My mother screamed. Nadia stood in the center of all of it, holding her bump with both hands, and she was looking at me, not with anger, not with whatever I had expected. She was looking at me with an expression I recognized because I had worn it my entire life, the expression of someone who finally understands that the room was never arranged for them. I picked up my bag. I walked to the door. I did not look back. I sat in my car in the parking lot for 11 minutes. I know because I watched the clock. Then I started the engine and drove. Here is what I didn't know when I left that room. Trevor had been parked 2 blocks away. He had sat in his car for the 11 minutes I was sitting in mine. I know this because he called me 6 days later and told me. He told me that in those 11 minutes he had called his attorney. He told me he had already retained a family law specialist by the following morning. And then he told me the thing I had not known, the thing that was still ticking when I walked out that door. Nadia had gone to the doctor in her 8th week and had blood work done. Standard prenatal panel. One of the things that panel included was blood type verification. Trevor was O positive. Nadia was A positive. The baby had come back AB negative. Trevor had been sitting on that information for 6 weeks. His attorney had advised him to wait. He had waited, and he had gone to that shower with that knowledge already fully formed. And when I pulled back those curtains, the last thing he needed to confirm was already confirmed. The baby was not his. Cole's blood type is AB negative. I know because I have his medical paperwork in a file cabinet in our apartment that I have since emptied and closed. The divorce was not simple. None of it was simple. Cole hired an attorney before I could file, which told me he'd been preparing too. That in those 2 days after the shower, he'd understood what was coming and moved quickly. He contested the apartment. He contested the joint savings account, which held $34,000 that we had been putting aside for a house. The process took 7 months. I paid my attorney attorney $9,200. I got the savings account. He got the furniture, which I had picked out, which I still occasionally think about with a specific and petty grief. My mother did not call me for 3 months after the shower. When she finally did, she did not apologize. She said she had been trying to process. She said I had humiliated the family. She said what I had done was cruel, that there were better ways, that I could have come to her privately. I listened to her say all of this. When she finished, I said, "You told her she could keep lying to me. You called me fine." There was a long silence. Then she said, "I was trying to protect both of you." I said, "You were protecting one of us. You just can't say which one out loud." I hung up. My father called twice. I didn't answer either time. He left a voicemail on the second call. He said he was sorry. He said he had told my mother it was wrong, and she hadn't listened, and he hadn't pushed hard enough. He said he had failed me. He was crying on the voicemail. He's my father, and I love him, and I haven't called him back yet, but I've listened to that voicemail 4 times. Nadia sent me one message. It came 6 weeks after the shower, from a number I didn't recognize. She must have known I'd blocked her. It said, "I know there's nothing I can say. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just need you to know I'm sorry. Not because I got caught, because it was wrong. I knew it was wrong the whole time, and I did it anyway, and I have to live with that." I read it twice. I didn't respond. Not because I don't believe her. I think I do believe her. But sorry and forgiven are not the same word, and I'm not there yet. And I may not get there. And that is a true thing I'm still working out. Trevor filed for divorce. The paternity has been formally contested. The legal process is ongoing, and I won't speculate on how it resolves because I don't have complete information, and that's not my story to tell. What I know is that he did not come after me. He called me once and said, "Thank you." That was the whole call. 30 seconds. Thank you. He hung up. Bex, Nadia's closest friend, the woman who leaned over and made that sound in the garden room, texted me 3 days after the shower. She said she had suspected something was wrong for months. She said she had asked Nadia directly twice and been told she was imagining things. She said, "You deserved better from all of us. I'm sorry I didn't say something." I wrote back, "You weren't the one who should have. We have had coffee twice since then. She is good company." I moved back to San Diego in October. Different neighborhood, Hillcrest instead of Mission Hills, a 2-bedroom apartment that is entirely mine in the specific way that nothing has been mine in a long time. I have a couch I chose, dishes I chose, a reading chair in the corner by the window that I chose, that nobody will ever move to a location I didn't pick, that is positioned for the light in the morning, which is the light I like best. Cole is in Riverside now, which I learned from a mutual acquaintance. I don't know more than that, and I don't want to. Here is the thing I come back to most often, the thought I'm still turning over almost 8 months later. I think about the girl who set that table, not the one at the shower, the metaphorical table, the one I had been setting my whole life, at every family dinner and every celebration and every moment where the room rearranged itself for Nadia and I adapted. I set that table patiently and correctly and without complaint, and for a long time I thought that patience was a virtue. I thought the ability to absorb disappointment without bending was something to be proud of. I'm not sure that's right anymore. I think sometimes the table setter is so focused on doing the task perfectly that she doesn't notice who's eating at it. I missed signals I should have caught. I trusted in ways that were naive. I mistook the warmth of a man who was careful to stay warm even while lying for the warmth of a man who was actually there. I mistook a family that functioned for a family that loved equally. The shower was not revenge. Or, it was not only revenge. It was the only remaining way to stop being the person something was happening to and start being the person doing something about it. I'm 31. I have the apartment and the reading chair and the morning light. I have 7 months of therapy and a therapist who asks good questions and does not let me off easy. I have Bex, occasionally. I have my father's voicemail that I have not yet been able to delete. She can never find out, my mother said. She was wrong about that. She was wrong about a lot of things, but that one I can say with certainty because I am the she in question, and I found out, and I am still standing, and the room is arranged exactly the way I chose. Something real was lost. I know that. I am not going to tell you it wasn't. My sister, my marriage, the version of my family I had learned to live alongside with all its failures and inequities, which was still something and is now irrevocably different. You can do the right thing and still grieve what it cost you. Both of those things are true at the same time. I set the table one last time, and then I left the room.